All right, so let's think about oligopolies with more than two firms. Suppose a third firm enters the market, builds a new cell tower, and increases supply. Well, there's two effects. There's the price effect, which we've already covered, right? Reflects how a change in price affects the firm's revenue. And there's the output effect, the fact that the change in the number of customers will affect revenue. And it's coming from a change in price. So why then is it harder to maintain a cartel as the number of firms increases? What is the reason there? The first reason is that there's a smaller impact that a cheater will have on the market price when it expands output. Okay, so there's a smaller impact on price, and so the price effect is smaller relative to the output effect. And also, the firms aren't necessarily the same size, so cheating by smaller firms will have less of an impact than larger firms. Okay, so collusion gets even more difficult as we add the number of firms to the oligopoly. Here's an oligopoly in real life, in the real world. OPEC, the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries. It includes 12 member nations, and it controls almost 60% of the world's known oil reserves. So substantial portion of the world's oil supply. And they account for 1/3 of the world's crude oil production. Now, Saudi Arabia itself, which Saudi Arabia is one of the 12 member nations, by itself, Saudi Arabia accounts for almost 40% of OPEC's reserves and production. So Saudi Arabia is by far the biggest member nation. Now, OPEC over its history has at times been able to maintain a cartel, but also at times the cartel has failed. And in fact, that's actually what's going on right now, and why gas prices are so cheap, or at least part of the reason why. That has to do with the supply side, of course. The other reason is because demand has dramatically decreased since we're all staying home right now. But basically, OPEC chooses quantity in order to increase price. So it rations output, it restricts output collectively. So each member nation commits to restricting its output in order to charge a higher price. And like I said, it hasn't always been an effective cartel, and in fact, it's facing that issue right now. And in fact, as well, over time, OPEC's market power has fallen due to several things. But so when they ration output, they basically determine how much collectively they want to produce, and they then assign each country a quota. And the reason it fails is quite frequently some member nations produce over their quota. And on top of that, the reason that their market power has fallen over time is because countries like the United States have developed technologies that allow them to extract more oil. And so there's been an increase in production from non-member countries. So they had a lot of power in the 70s, not nearly as much today. Right, and a large part of that is due to the shale production technology that fracking, right? Fracking is what we're referring to there. Okay, so here's a little practice for you. Which of the following is true about oligopoly? If you need to, take a minute and pause the video and come back, and I'll reveal the answer. Okay, so after thinking about it for a second, hopefully you came to the conclusion that the correct answer is C. Basically, when there's oligopoly, it means that the concentration ratio for the industry is relatively high, close to 1 or 100, if you're multiplying it by 100. Why do cartel deals tend to not last? Take a minute and pause the video if you need to. Okay, so after thinking about it for a second, hopefully you realize the correct answer is A. Each firm in the cartel has an incentive to be uncooperative and defect from the cartel arrangement. Recall that the cartel is acting collectively as a monopoly, and we saw in both of the duopoly examples that that in either case the monopoly cartel collusive outcome is not stable.